Welcome to the Tuesday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Tuesday morning. Hey, how's it going, Astro? Good afternoon over there. Good morning over here. I appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. Today is part 2 of the chill vibes, as I don't have work today, so we can take it nice and easy. We do have a few headlines to go through them, but we are in no rush. Alright, let's get some of these headlines going and see what we got for today. First up, New app to assist candidates. Candidate filings in North Carolina. I think this is a pretty good idea. With the primary elections looming, it's now going to be a tight deadline for candidates and election officials. The North Carolina General Assembly has been ordered by the state Supreme Court to redraw election maps after they found them unconstitutionally gerrymandered. We'll get into some of those. Apparently, that's been quite the issue here. North Carolina State Board of Elections agrees. The court is giving them time to get things done, even on a tight schedule. The courts listened to our filings with them about what timeframes we need to be under, and this falls within those frames, said Karen Brinson Bell, NCSBE Executive Director. North Carolina Supreme Court has given the General Assembly until February 18th to submit new maps. Justices will make their decision as to whether they are fair by February 23rd, with candidate filings starting the next day and ending March 4th. With less than 24 hours between court approvals and filings, there isn't enough time to input new maps into the database so that the candidates for state, House, and Senate will know where they are qualified to run. For instance, that a new app will be used instead. I mean, I think that this should all kind of be across the board, right? This is a good idea. Basically, you would have an app that would automatically tell you what district you can run in and make it easy to file within the district that you are going to be representing. I think that's a pretty good idea. So we'll work off an app that shows where someone's residence address is within whatever jurisdiction they're able to file for. We're making a few workarounds, but the nice thing is the app will actually be available to the public and to the candidate, so it may prove to be a helpful tool, not just something to help us logistically. Nice. Unlike those running for state legislator, congressional candidates are not required to live within the district they are running in. But they won't know the exact outline of those district maps until they're approved by the court. Also, COVID is at play, where the main candidate filing location will be. It does create some logistics that we'd have to work around, especially given the social distancing and so forth that we need. Once candidate filing is over, NCSBE believes that they can get ballots ready in time for the May 17th primary. We'll move quickly. We will be very quickly move into ballot coding and ballot proofing once we have the filing period complete on March 4th, and be ready to send out absentee ballots 45 days prior to the election. How widespread would the app be working? It's just in North Carolina, but I think that this is a good idea. This is a good idea. I don't know why everybody else isn't doing this. This also gives the public access to this app, so I think that this is a very, very good idea. Why not? You get to see who's filing for running. You get to see your district maps in an overview. So yeah, this is just only in North Carolina. Are there potential serious privacy issues? I don't know what that means. Like privacy issues, the government already has your information. The government already knows where you live. Pretty sure it's not going to be any different. Pretty sure it's not going to provide any other information they don't already have. I think that it's a good idea. You could also see in real time how badly something is gerrymandered if it's available to the public, and you can kind of like get a overview of how gerrymandered something can potentially be. You can really get a good visual representation of that, right? I think that that's pretty useful. I heard electoral maps are online. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can look them up. But it's more convenient when it's on your phone and it's on an app. The convenience of access of information makes a difference, I think. Speaking of illegal, unconstitutional gerrymandering, Ohio Supreme Court again strikes down state legislative maps as unconstitutional. The Ohio Supreme Court struck down a new legislative map as unconstitutional in a ruling Monday night. The court rejected the maps and redistricting commission that the redistricting commission approved on January 22nd, according to the ruling. It has previously rejected another version of the map on January 12th. It is clear that the map jars and that the commission knew that their approach, starting with the invalidated map and switching competitive Republican-leaning districts to competitive Democratic-leaning districts, would have a dual effect of eliminating weak Republican districts and creating weak Democratic districts. The ruling referenced new constitutional language for the state that required districts to favor parties in proportion to the makeup of the statewide vote, which is 45% Republican, 46% Democratic. But the court said that the latest plan was submitted favored Republicans, winning 58% of the seats. In a dissenting opinion, two justices, including Pat DeWine, who is Ohio Governor Mike DeWine's son, and Sharon Kennedy, sharply criticized the decision. What? Oof. First of all, isn't that a bit of a conflict of interest? That's kind of weird. In the UK, this kind of thing ran into all kinds of privacy, security, and data issues. Maybe, but nothing that you wouldn't be facing otherwise. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that much of a big deal, especially that it's not like they're posting like social security numbers in that area. USA Hole rating with a party of 36. Welcome, everybody. How's it going? Buddyhead, how's it going? Car accident. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Card Shark, thank you for the follow. Folks, if you don't already, go check out twitch.tv/USAHole. Appreciate the raid. Thank you so much. Oli Problemas. Nellis. Miraculous. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Buddyhead. Hey, how's it going? I'm hanging in there. Today we're having a pretty chill day, alright? Pretty chill day. It's my day off. So we're taking it nice and easy. I appreciate you sending your wonderful community over here. Thank you. Ali Problemas, thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate that. Miraculously, thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. If you guys don't know, Alio, how's it going? If you guys don't know who we are a Difficult Truth. we do news and politics Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And join us on Saturdays for Saturday Catterdays around noon Eastern Time. If you hit the follow button, you do get 5 free emotes, with one of which is Vaquita the cat. No problem. Thank you. I appreciate that. Saturday Catterday? Yes, there is a Saturday Catterday, where we just hang out and talk with the co-host. It's usually a miscellaneous version of the stream. There's like anything can happen on Saturday Catterdays. It could be a video game stream. It could just be hanging out with chat. But that's the day that the co-host can actually join us. And we usually just kind of hang out. And it's miscellaneous. But there is one thing that always happens in Saturday Catterdays, which is guaranteed kitty cats on stream. Sometimes several kitty cats on stream. Just depends. Just depends on who feels like showing up on the camera. Sounds like my kind of party, absolutely. So you guys came in just as we were starting this article about gerrymandering. Absolutely. So we're starting this article on gerrymandering. Ohio Supreme Court has sent back the districting map again. I also noticed, this is news to me, I didn't know this here, but apparently one of the justices is the governor's son, which I'm pretty sure that's, I mean, if your son is a Supreme Court justice, I mean, say what you will, but I can't help but think that, shouldn't that be like a conflict of interest? It is apparent that in disregard of constitutional standards, 4 members of this court has now commandeered the redistricting process, and they will continue to reject any General Assembly district plan until they get the plan they want. Oh man, someone's big mad. Someone's big mad. At this point, one must wonder which 7-member body is the true redistricting commission, the constitutionally named officers, or this court. Well... So a 3-day account is, asking what my political affiliation is. I don't know. It's Bean Biddy's Pet Kitties. Yes, we do pet the cats. Neither. So, a redistricting commission can propose the redistricting maps, but the Supreme Court can also reject them if they're unconstitutional. You can't just do whatever you want, right? It's got to be within the parameters of the legislature, right? Jesus Christ. The court will allow a Ohio Redistricting Commission to redraw new House and Senate maps for the state no later than February 17. So this is like article number 2 about the problems with gerrymandering and how many times maps continue to we continue to throw the maps back for redrawing, right? So that's article number 2. Article number 3, Supreme Court sides with GOP and Alabama election map case. This one went up all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court put a hold on the lower court ruling that Alabama must draw new congressional districts before the 2022 elections to increase black voting power. The High Court order boosts Republican chances to hold 6 of the state's 7 seats in the House of Representatives. The court's action by a 5-4 vote announced on Monday means the upcoming elections will be conducted under a map drawn by Alabama's Republican-controlled legislature that contains one majority black district represented by a black Democrat in a state which more than 1/4 of the population is black. Three-judge lower court, including 2 judges appointed by former President Trump, has ruled that the state has likely violated Federal Voting Rights Act by diluting the political power of black voters by not creating a second district in which they made up a majority or close to it. Good memes. Throughout the Constitution, let's start anew, or depending on what you want to do, you can add more amendments. I don't know. It just depends. There are questions about how some of our institutions function or lack thereof that could be made. Arguments for adjusting. A good example would be the Electoral College. Justices Brett Kavanaugh and Samuel Alito, part of the conservative majority, said the lower court for a new map came too close to the 2020 election cycle. So wait, the argument is that it's diluting a demographic, in this case, black voters, right? It's diluting the political power of black voters. And the argument here is that it came too close to the election cycle. There are several cases going on in different states that are going back to the drawing board. So why is this suddenly the problem? Chief Justice Roberts joined his 3 more liberal colleagues in dissent. The justices will at some later date decide whether the map produced by states violates the landmark voting rights law, case that would call into question decades of this court's precedent of the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Right, that's a whole separate problem here. So I don't understand why they... Okay. Alabama lawmakers redrew the state's congressional districts following the results of the 2020 census. Several groups of voters sued, argued that the maps diluted the voting power of black residents. In a unanimous ruling in late January, the 3 judges said that the groups were likely to succeed in showing that the state had violated the Voting Rights Act. As a result, the panel ordered lawmakers to redraw the districts so black voters would be a majority or close to it in 2 districts, not 1. The ruling ran more than 200 pages. Jesus. The panel wrote that we do not regard that question as a close one. Alabama asked the Supreme Court to put the ruling on hold while it appeals, and justices agreed. The state argued that it drew the maps guided by the race-neutral principles, that the map is similar to past maps. Oh, okay. More than a dozen mostly Republican-led states had filed a brief urging the justices to side with Alabama and follow it and allow it to use the maps it originally drew. Dual Ross, a lawyer for Alabamians who sued, called the state's congressional district a textbook case of Voting Rights Act violations, and the High Court's decision to intervene is disheartening. But the facts are clear. Ross, a lawyer with the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, wrote in an email to the Associated Press, Alabama's current congressional map violates the Voting Rights Act. The litigation will continue. We are confident that the black Alabamians will eventually have the congressional map they deserve, one that fairly represents all voters. Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall called the order a victory for the state, and he believes that the state will ultimately prevail in the ongoing litigation. So we can see these consistent problems with gerrymandering. Right? Marshall's office argued that the congressional districts are similar to those in use and approved by courts since the 90s. Okay, that's not a good excuse. This is fallacy of tradition. Roberts, who typically votes against consideration of race, wrote he shares some of Alabama's concern, but still would have let the redrawn districts govern 2022 election and future elections governed by the ultimate outcome in the case. Kavanaugh, writing explaining his vote, stressed that the court has repeatedly declined in the past to change rules close to an election. When an election is close at hand, the rules of the road must be clear and settled. Late judicial tinkering with the election laws can lead to disruption, unanticipated and unfair consequences for candidates, political parties, and voters, among others. It is one thing for a state on its own to toy with its election laws close to a state election, but it's quite another for a federal court to swoop in and redo a state's election laws in the period close to an election. But they're not arguing state. They're arguing of whether or not a federal, whether or not a districting map violates the Voting Rights Act. Jesus. Taking issue with Kavanaugh, Kagan noted that the lower courts ruled a month before any votes will be cast. He criticized the conservative for using the emergency application process known as the shadow docket to signal or make changes in the law without anything approaching to full briefing arguments. Anything approaching full briefing and argument. So here we have 3 different scenarios, and I'm sure that we've had this problem, since redistricting, since gerrymandering has been a thing, right? So maybe, considering the fact that we consistently see these problems where we have to go back and forth, and where, let's be honest, the party, whoever is in power, whichever party has the state legislature in that state, basically controls the districting maps. Maybe that shouldn't be. Maybe that shouldn't be a thing. Maybe instead of having all of this useless time being going back and forth between court cases, going back to the drawing board, and potentially disenfranchising voters, maybe. And this might just be a radical concept, maybe we should have a completely separate committee that is not based on who is in control of the state legislature at that time, to redraw maps based on the census, based on census data, and not based on political party or how you can benefit your political party, carving it out to the point where there's no chance for an opposing party to be able to even be competitive, essentially squeezing out your opposition. Hey Skiddadeer, how's it going? So we continuously see these back and forths, waste of time, waste of resources, and it should just be done by an independent committee. I mean, this isn't like unheard of. There's plenty of other countries that do this, where any type of representative redistricting maps are done by an independent committee. I don't think that that's like, out of order, right? Gerrymandering should just cease. Gerrymandering shouldn't be a thing. Period. Full stop. Hey Skiddadeer, how's it going? Howdy, howdy. What level should districting be done at? I mean, you could have the districting done at the state level, but separate from the state legislature, right? Like, for example, if there's a state that's like ruby red, like, I don't know, Florida, right? The Republican state legislature shouldn't be the ones calling the shots when it comes to redistricting, right? It should be independent commissions or committees that will draw those lines across the board. Yeah, state. I think it should be within the state level, that each state has its own committee, has its own independent committee, separate from the political parties, that draws up these lines. Not a sub-state level. No, it should just be like, It should just be at the state level how it is. How it is now, except you you separate it from the political parties. Doing well. Hope the news hasn't been too horrible. I saw some police taking action in Canada, and they're holding their hands kind of way. Who chooses the independent committee? Okay, that's a good question. That is a very good question. Who should choose the independent committee? Should they be voted in by... No, that doesn't make sense. How could the political bias be taken out at a state level? You can't, but you can try to make it separate from the actual, you can try to take it from separately from just the state legislator having control of that. Because depending on who chooses, we're presented with the same problems. Yes, you are correct. So now that's a good follow-up question. Jesus Christ. So who would choose that independent committee? How would we make it as fair as possible? Should we designate a database where you can choose names out of random? No. Wait, I know that other countries do this. Okay, so there could be a system where you have to have a 5 or an equal number of one party, an equal number of another party, and another section that are independent, meaning that they don't have political bias or I should say they don't have political affiliation with any party. So you have 3 different subsets. You would have 5, for example, like an example would be you make a redistricting commission that has 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 4 who decline to any political party or are not affiliated with any political party. Yeah, preferably no governor's relatives. Jesus. I can't believe Ohio has a Supreme Court justice that is the son of the governor. That is just unbelievable to me. You have state and counties and districts. Yeah, but the districts are what are at play here, right? Because those determine your representation or amount of representatives or who is going to represent you, right? So California has a California Citizens Redistricting Commission, which has 14 members, 5 of which are Democrats, 5 of which are Republicans, and 4 from neither party. And it seems like this works because apparently, and California is mostly Democratic, but apparently this got some politicians very big mad because many safe seats could suddenly become competitive. In other words, it breaks this notion of it breaks this undue balance of gerrymandering. Because if you're getting big mad that your seat all of a sudden is competitive, then I think then it does what it's intended to do, right? You can't eliminate 100% of all biases, or you can't guarantee 100%. But I think that this is certainly an interesting way of approaching it, right? So I think that could be a solution. Just have it's an interesting solution. I like it more. Hey Lawsuit, how's it going? I come to lurk as I sleep. Please keep me safe, cousin. How's it going? I like it more if the people picked aren't politicians but regular citizens. Yeah, I mean, like, they're all gonna have, like, biases, and, It didn't say that if these are politicians, it just said that there are 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans, so maybe they are, just people, regular people, and just to make sure that there's, quote, equal balance, you put 5, 5, and 4. But they lack the specialization. I just find the personality types that are drawn to engage in politics as scummier humans than the average. Well, sometimes that's the truth. Sometimes it's not. But you can only do what you can, right? You kind of balance things out. And I think that this is a good... It's a step in the right direction. Certainly better than just having the one party who has the state legislator be the ones to call the shots, making anything else impossible, right? Because I live in Florida, basically my vote as a if I choose to vote as a for the Democratic Party, it would be basically null. There's no real like power or as much power in the opposition party. It's okay, just been up for too long. Jesus, Lawsuit, you gotta get some rest, buddy. You can't just say, well, people who are drawn to politics are usually scummier than average. To say that there's no like good solution. You can only do what you can, right? I'm the same in California. My vote essentially has always been wasted. So maybe there shouldn't be anything like gerrymandering. Maybe they should always adopt a independent commission to redraw maps so that elections are competitive and people feel like their vote has meaning. California is getting worse by the day. I'm selling my house and moving. Neighbors had their Ring camera rip off the side of the house by two guys with guns. I'm done with this place. Jesus. I mean, that's an anecdote, my friend. That is a horrible anecdote, but an anecdote nonetheless. I know that's why I'm here to lurk and sleep until keep safe while I sleep, going into the wrong streams where it's unsafe for this traditional native. Oh, it's okay. You're definitely safe over here, my friend. Just hang tight, you know? It seems to me like consistently gerrymandering always brings up more problems, right? We've had a bunch of court cases going back and forth, not just in these three instances, but even in I believe there's another court case being fought in, I want to say, South Carolina or North Carolina as well. And it's just like, let's just make a independent commission and be done with it. We recently targeted and had our recycling bins run over, and likewise gunshots over my windows at night have become far more common. I mean, I could say the same thing about here, about Florida. Yeah, it's almost like living in a big city or living in a city area. That's just kind of what it is. You can't just say that, oh, it's only California. Here we go, 19 hours ago. Broward Sheriff's Office investigating a vehicle after shot up in Oakland Park. And that's just a quick one that I searched up. I don't know what major decline means, but anyways, TLDR, gerrymandering should be just done away with. There's just too many problems with gerrymandering. And I would argue that it is undemocratic. So we've all seen this horrible, if you haven't already, this one's a rough one. This Amir Locke case was absolutely horrifying, and I cannot believe that these people aren't in jail. Amir Locke's family calls for a full ban on no-knock warrants as the Minneapolis mayor answers city council questions about city's policies. Seems to me like a consistent problem here in Minneapolis. Even in Boston, people went to jail for gerrymandering. Your vote does matter. I mean, we should bring that back. We should have jail time for gerrymandering. No, it's legal here, unfortunately, nowadays. Maybe in certain areas. I don't know where you live, Alio, but here it's here and in a lot of places, it is quite encouraged. The parents of Amir Locke, a 22-year-old black man killed during a police raid in Minneapolis last week, are calling for an end to no-knock warrants in the city, describing them as a failure of law enforcement. Yeah, I mean, like, just in broad general, like, this should be illegal completely. There should be no reason why police, regardless of the situation, should be allowed to have or to be issued no-knock warrants. Like, that just shouldn't be a thing, because it just seems to me like a lot of oopsies keep happening. And people keep dying or severely hurt. Nobody, oopsies, wrong address, wrong person, oops. There's a footage of the same SWAT team driving down the streets shooting random civilians. What the heck? The same officers? Like, during the, oh, I see. So there were, what? Jesus Christ. Yeah, I use that in quotations. I'm saying that there's a continuing pattern that tells me that this isn't a mistake. Okay, it's a policy. The no-knock warrant is what caused Amir's death. I agree. Well, it was the action of those officers who are encouraged, and I don't want to say encouraged, but the actions of the officers who are protected, sheltered by the state, and the policies put in place make these type of outcomes very, very likely. It's the whole system. He wasn't killed, he wasn't murdered, he was executed. Yeah, I agree. Locke was shot as a SWAT team executed a warrant at an apartment Wednesday morning. A short clip of the incident shows police entering the apartment and shouting commands at Locke, who appeared to be sleeping, gets up holding a gun his family said he illegally owned. Police then opened fire. Yeah, like, listen, you can't just bust in people's house, okay? And all of a sudden they're in bed, they hear this obvious like busting down of your door, or in this case I think they were like using a key that the landlord gave them. Can somebody fact check me on that? I think they used the key that the landlord gave them because apparently that's cool. Apparently landlords can do that, or are willing to do that to police, which makes no sense. And then our surprised Pikachu face when a legally owned gun, a legal gun owner brings up a pistol to what appears to them is an intruder. So why are you punished? Like, this doesn't make sense. You can't be like pro Second Amendment. You can't be pro gun and then be like, well, this is okay. Jesus. Yeah, I don't know if I can play that. Let me see. No one appears to get hurt, but it's bad enough. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they missed every single shot. It's hard to believe that this is under department policy. So you just go out there. This is like kids shooting like paintball guns at people's mailboxes. This is the exact same attitude. Okay, even if they didn't hit a single person, Like, what gives them exactly the right? I'm pretty sure that this is not under policy to just shoot your crowd control munitions or whatever the hell it is that they're apparently using at people who clearly that person had their hands up. Like, people, like, these people should have never been police officers. Like, the moment the moment this video came out, they should have been fired on the spot. Yeah, like, this person, how do you know that this person was even a protester? I can't tell. Like, they're not even in the protest area because I don't see any other people in this area. Jesus Christ. It's an empty, like, it's what it seems to me, like an empty area. Yeah, these people should have, like, immediately been fired and then charged with assault. And the sad part about this whole, the saddest part about this whole ordeal is that Locke wasn't even named in the warrant. It wasn't for him. It wasn't for him. As professional people that carry guns and are supposed to protect and serve, they didn't protect my son that day. They chose not to do that, and they took him from me, and I am angry. Yeah, that's the... Jesus. He didn't even see what coming. He couldn't see who took his life, describing how his son usually sleeps on his stomach with a cover over his head. In November of 2020, amid a nationwide reckoning over police policies, prompted in part by the murder of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer, and then the shooting of Breonna Taylor during a warrant service in Louisville, Kentucky, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, and then the police chief Maderia Arradondo announced that they were instituting a policy that required officers to announce their presence and purpose before entering a building except under special circumstances. At the city council meeting on Monday, seeking clarity in the wake of Locke's death, Frey that he holds himself accountable for using language indicating that the city had banned no-knock warrants. So they never did that. They just told people that they were doing something, kind of, maybe, don't worry about it. And then, like, apparently they didn't. At a city council meeting, he holds himself accountable for using language indicating that the city had banned no-knock warrants. Frey was re-elected in 2021, Jesus, and said that some of his campaign statements were misleading. He said that his language in describing no-knock warrants were more casual and did not reflect the necessary precision or nuance. What? I believe that my language, what we were saying we were saying certainly in longer form honored the spirit of this policy change, Ray said Monday at a virtual meeting of the Policy and Government Oversight Committee. But there are instances when it did not, and I own that. Well, somebody's dead. So, yeah. The mayor told the committee that before late 2020, there was a state law on no-knock and knock and announce warrants, but there was no delineating factors between these two options. The city had no policy at the time. What? Our policy reform then required officers to announce their presence and their purpose prior to entry when serving any type of warrant, including a no-knock warrant. On Friday, Frey imposed an immediate moratorium on the request and execution of no-knock warrants, but his announcement noted that they could still be carried out if there is an imminent threat of harm to an individual or public, and then the warrant must be approved by the chief. Example of those circumstances include hostage situations and extreme domestic violence situations in which an officer may have to protect someone from a threat of severe bodily harm. We have to challenge them and not put a band-aid over no-knock warrants. Jeff Storms, a Locke family attorney, told CNN they need to take these steps and completely ban no-knock warrants. It's not safe for either side of the door. Nothing they can do can bring our son back, but the best thing they can do at this point with no-knock warrants and prosecuting officers who decided to play God, and what they can do is fire him, prosecute him, and just tell the truth. Yeah, at this point, like, no-knocks are historically dangerous for police officers and residents, according to Rachel Morin, a University of St. Thomas Law School associate professor and founder of the Criminal Justice Juvenile Defense Clinic. Just to give one example, between 2010 and 2016, at least 94 people were killed in the United States as a result of no-knock warrants. Jesus Christ. What Mayor Frey's November 2020 policy did was require Minneapolis police in most situations to announce their presence before crossing the threshold into a residence, pointing out that police could open the residence without knocking, but then were required to announce their presence when they crossed the threshold. Attorney Benjamin Crump, who represents Locke's family, said that in too many instances, someone affected by a no-knock warrant raid ends up wounded or dead, and that most of the time that person is black. If the police would have announced their presence to carry out their duties in a safe and professional manner, the death of Amir Locke could have been prevented. Listen, unless there's like some serious, legitimate, imminent like threat, this shouldn't be a thing, right? If you're like coming after if you're coming after a person, in their home, and you don't know. I mean, like, especially how do you mess this up? Their name wasn't even in the warrant. And furthermore, you're putting everybody there at risk. You're putting the person and the police at risk as well. Because it turns out that there's a lot of people who have guns in their homes, and if you just bust down the door with a no-knock warrant or try to pick your door to serve a no-knock warrant and you have no idea who that is, then you have a right to defend yourself. This is an epic failure, like in the case of Breonna Taylor, right? Her boyfriend at the time shot and hit, I believe, an officer or several, because they just busted down the door, and especially like during odd hours and you're asleep and you hear something like that. I mean, what do you expect? This is an epic failure policy, and the policy that failed policy killed Amir Locke just as surely as the bullet that pierced his body. Yeah. No lessons learned. Yeah, this is just horrifying. The fact that there wasn't first of all, the fact that those police officers, were even on the street to begin with is just ridiculous. The fact that there's those police officers in the streets, those particular officers in the streets, is ridiculous to begin with. Unbelievable to me. Nika Constantino, one of Locke's cousins, said her family is struggling with knowing police are trained to disarm and de-escalate, yet body-worn camera video shows officers firing their guns within seconds of entering the apartment where Locke was in the living room and appearing to be waking up. Jesus. Cute animal video. Don't worry, we'll get to it, Alio. Not only is this method out of date, especially after BLM, but there are no other methods. Right, there shouldn't be a situation where the state can come into your home without a warrant and without specific notification, right? You can't just bust down people's doors, okay? This is not how this works. You can't just bust down people's doors. Landlords shouldn't be able to give police keys to your home to issue out a no-knock warrant. It just shouldn't be a thing, period, full stop. There should be no situation, no circumstance under where a no-knock warrant should exist, period. There's zero circumstances. There are zero circumstances in my head where a no-knock warrant needs to be issued. Period. Full stop. But that's the issue. America can't change methods. It's not even about, like, America itself. Each independent, like, each department has the ability to change these methods or policies, right? This is choosing not to fix this issue. This is Minneapolis, especially Minneapolis, which is unbelievable to me. Unbelievable to me. Still having this issue. This is lack of wanting to change it, because at this point, it's not that you don't recognize the problem. It's that you don't want to fix it. Well, I mean, either you're just this incapable. Either you're just this incapable of realizing what's happening, which is very hard to believe, or you're doing it on purpose. I don't know which one, because in Minneapolis, by now, come on. In Minneapolis, police leaders intend to meet with prominent activist DeRay McCason and Eastern Kentucky University Justice Studies professor Pete Kraska, who worked with Louisville police after Breonna Taylor's killing, have spearheaded significant reforms to unannounced entry police policies across the country. Yeah, like, this should be done away with. Period. Full stop. Like, enough. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. The police do not want change. Every request for less violence is only met with more. They want to ensure that the monopoly of violence belongs to them. Yeah, apparently. Because, like, I mean, Jesus Christ. You, like... in my opinion, under no circumstances should armed agents of the state be violating your space without having very strict legal boundaries attached to it. The way they are behaving almost suggests that they want a perfect case for them to diminish all self-defense laws. Yeah, I mean, that is, holy shit, Skidded here. That is a very important point there, right? Because if police officers are unencumbered in their ability to just walk into your home because reasons, I mean, this guy's name wasn't even on the warrant. Amir Locke's name was never on that warrant. So you bring up a good point, Skidadeer. I would say that Amir Locke, I still don't know. I mean, I need to watch this video, but I can't watch it on stream because it's very disturbing, and yeah, it's very disturbing. So I would have to watch it again, but I don't even know if he actually pulled out a gun, right? The story says that he had a legally owned firearm, not that he pointed it at, not that he drew it out. But even then, like, I'm sorry, if someone breaks into your door, if someone is unauthorized, you don't know. I mean, how does Amir Locke supposed to know that those are police if A, they're not announcing themselves, B, he had never been served that warrant. It was never for him. How do you know? The only other logical explanation that you have to assume is that someone's breaking into your home to hurt you. And you should be able to defend yourself. One person kills a cop in self-defense, and we're all going to into a new form of police state. It will be Terry versus Ohio for self-defense. Jesus Christ! I mean, we had the Breonna Taylor incident where the boyfriend successfully, because they tried to get him on charges. He successfully fought off those charges by claiming self-defense, and it seemed to stick because it's obvious, right? I'm sorry, I don't give a shit. If somebody busts down your door and you're just waking up, or you're in the middle of the night, or it's very early in the morning, especially in the manner that the Breonna Taylor's no-knock warrant was served, I'm sorry, but if somebody breaks down that door, the only logical explanation that you could have is that somebody's coming there to hurt you. And if you can't defend yourself from the state, then you don't have self-defense. And I thought, wait, I thought that the gun-ho Second Amendment people would be all in favor of making sure that this kind of stuff doesn't happen. I mean, I would certainly hope that they would stay consistent and principled, right? I'm very curious as to where the Back the Blue folks stand on this issue. Because one day that's going to happen, Skidded Deer. One day that's going to happen where one day it's going to happen where if they don't address this policy failure, where cops are just just willy-nilly no-knock warrants on people that that weren't even mentioned, one day one of these cops are going to get Robloxed. And yeah, exactly. One of the worst parts is that they still arrested her boyfriend and tried to ruin his rep by giving him a record, so thank God he successfully fought it, but yet people like Brian Laundrie remained a person of interest that their partner went missing, that they've abused, and not seen with no charges or anything. Yeah, yeah, like, Jesus. They're definitely separate instances, but I completely understand your point. I mean, it's just insane to me. It really is wild to me that no-knock warrants exist. Like, just think about that. Like, what I'm telling you, one of these days, it's going to end up really bad. It's going to end up really bad for the police, where they make another oopsie, except this oopsie is going to end up getting one of the officers Robloxed. And then we're going to have ourselves a legal cluster storm. Yes, he did. He did self Roblox. Yes, he did. Apparently, after they found his body, they found evidence to suggest that A, he was the one that did it, and B, that he self Robloxed himself. I just can't believe they arrested this poor man for trying to defend himself in his own home. Yeah, I know. I understand that they have to investigate every single shooting, but the idea that the idea that you can't defend your own home is beyond wild to me. Imagine armed agents of the state can just waltz into your home unannounced, you having no idea who that person is, especially in the Breonna Taylor case where they like busted down that door. Especially in the manner that they busted down that door. To not be able to like defend yourself, defend your home. Jeez. Who watches the overseers? If we stop, more harm will be done. Well, it should be theoretically. We should have a voice. We should be the one saying, "Hey, you know what? This policy is kind of like garbage. This policy is getting people killed." Okay. And in Minneapolis, it should be abundantly clear that there are some serious problems here. It should have been abundantly clear that there should have been serious that there are serious problems that needed to be addressed a very long time ago. I didn't hear any of the Second Amendment. Right-wing nuts talking about Breonna Taylor's boyfriend's right to defend themselves. It was very, 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 very far and few between. It was very, very far and few between. Like, you're right. It's like almost borderline crickets because I didn't hear anything about it. You have to ask individual people. Siscat resubscribing for a tier 1 sub. Thank you so much. Love the stream. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let's talk, hey, Pirate Ninja. Talking about no-knock raids, yeah, how they shouldn't be a thing, period, full stop. No questions, no doubt about it. It should just be done away with. No-knock warrants across the board, period, full stop. Just be done away with it. Not just armed, but out of uniform and civilian clothing. Yeah, like, Jesus. Good way to get into a gun battle with Second Amendment Americans. Yeah, like, I would like to know where, like, a lot of these folks stand in this situation, right? Where you have, AWOL Doggo, appreciate the follow, where you have a situation where armed agents of the state are waltzing into your home. You have no idea who these people are because you have no responsibility to understand what's happening, right? Why is it your responsibility? Hey, hold on, stop. Wait, are you a police? Are you actually police? Who are you? Like, no. That's not your responsibility. That is not your responsibility. I would almost argue also that if you live in a rented apartment, that your landlord shouldn't just be able to give an extra key willy-nilly to the police who asked for it in no-knock warrants. Might as well call them no-knock death squads. Yeah. Because it seems to me it continues to happen. Not only that, like, this person wasn't even on the warrant. That's what, like, Omega triggers me about this whole story. Like, on top of the fact that this is just like a gross violation of human rights, right? The ability for armed agents to have no-knock warrant powers. Nah, get out of here. But mistakes can happen. This person's name wasn't even on the warrant. That's right, Pirate Ninja. There's also been numerous situations where they go to the wrong house. What was that story? A long time ago, where police were like in a motel or hotel situation, all armed to the teeth, and they just executed a person and I think in one of their ARs they had like something on their AR. No, this happened long time ago. Yes, Daniel something. Yes, I mean, this isn't like a new thing, okay? This isn't a new thing, is what I'm trying to get at. Yes, Breonna Taylor, we talked about that, says Kat. This article mentions it. Right, they were giving him contradicting commands, like, yeah, like, and there was a bunch of people yelling at him, and he wasn't even armed, to my knowledge, right? He was already done. And there was another incident where police were trying to serve a warrant, and literally the guy, it was at wee hours in the morning. Guy had no idea. To my knowledge, I don't even know if he was also supposed to be on the warrant. But he was scared because he thought that he was about to get like mugged or something. So he had a weapon ready. He had a gun ready. And the moment he opened that door, like just peeked, the police just like roadblocked him immediately. Like, he didn't know. I forgot that other story. But the guy had no idea who these people were. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and heard like banging on the door, and he went to go answer it with obviously a weapon, a handgun, because who the hell is banging on your door at 3 o'clock in the morning if you're not expecting anybody? And the moment he like peeked out, they like roadblocked him. And this was years ago. Again, to illustrate the point that this isn't like a new problem. It just keeps happening, right? And we just keep kind of shrugging it along. That's right. Now it's a similar situation with Amir. People pathetically try to cope by lying by saying he pointed a gun at the police, which clearly he had barely held on to it. Scared, trying to figure out what the heck was going on to defend himself if needed. Right, like, I'm sorry, dude. If you're coming into this house or anybody's house, like this is the same argument that people use, like, oh, well, if a burglar ever, like frothing at the mouth at the idea of somebody breaking into the house so that they can shoot him. If a burglar ever broke into my house, I'm ready. Oh, well, dude, how do you know? It's not your responsibility to know. There are armed agents of the state who are allowed to waltz into your home, and you're okay with that? No, I haven't seen that, Pirate Ninja. Yeah, right. You're supposed to be able to protect your home and stand your ground, up to and including against armed agents of the state. That's right, James Napper. Like, how backwards or how, like, hypocritical, I don't know if that's the correct word, is it that you have, like, this, what people consider, like, this holy right, right? The holy right of the Second Amendment, where you're legally allowed to own a gun in self-defense. Okay, fine, fair, whatever. But then you try to use that right, and it's suddenly not okay against the state. Against the state, all of a sudden, that's where you draw the line. That's the no-no. Nah. Yes, Miraculous, that is true. It is true. We can look it up. It's not that difficult. Supreme Court on police Serve and protect. I don't know. I'll just Google that. In Winnebago, the Supreme Court has ruled that police agencies are not obligated to provide protection for citizens. Okay, nice meme. Back in 2005, Washington, June 27, 2005, the Supreme Court ruled on Monday that the police do not have a constitutional duty to protect a person from harm. So then why the fuck are you there? Is this a discussion on the Fourth Amendment plus stand your ground plus gun culture fear tactics? Kind of. It's just addressing the asinine concept. The asinine concept of no-knock warrants. That's literally what it is. That's what the discussion is about. Is no-knock warrants shouldn't be allowed, shouldn't be legal, shouldn't be constitutional, period, full stop, no questions asked. I mean, if we're being honest here, protection against the state is probably the solid conclusion from the Second Amendment. Yeah, and we can't even do that. Because then what? Then we'll get punished for it by getting executed on the spot? So then what exactly is the point of the Second Amendment if the state can literally waltz into your home, armed agents of the state can waltz into your home because reasons? No knock equals home invasion. It should be viewed as such. To be quite honest, it should be viewed as such because how are you supposed to know? In fact, the law states that it's not your responsibility. To know. If someone busts into your door or busts through your window or waltzes into your home or castle, like in the stand your ground castle doctrine laws, if somebody waltzes like unannounced or uses force to break into your home, it's not your responsibility to say, hey, whoa, are you gonna hurt me? Oh, stop, are you gonna hurt me, sir? Who are you? Like, no, that's not your responsibility. That's the whole point of the law, is to be able to, in extenuating circumstances, to use whatever means necessary to protect yourself, right? That's the whole thing, because everybody, regardless of where you are, has a right to preserve their life, right? You have a right to protect yourself, preserve your life by any means necessary in a dire situation. You're not responsible to stop and ask somebody who just broke down your door if they're going to hurt you or not. Okay? And you don't have to protect yourself with a gun. It doesn't matter. Whatever means necessary, you have a right to do so. That's the whole point of having these laws. It doesn't say you have a right to defend yourself, asterisk, except when police randomly waltz into your house. What? Because how do you know they're police? How do you know they're police? Not your responsibility. I thought the whole purpose of the Second A was to keep a well-regulated militia against the tyranny of government taking over, so no, it doesn't now it doesn't work against the state. I mean, at the time, the Second A was designated to keep on some kind of battle-ready force to repel an invasion. Right. But nowadays, it's kind of been interpreted as some, right that you can just carry and bear arms, which, fine. But the whole point was to keep in check, allegedly, to keep in check the state, right? Allegedly. Remember how all these people, all these anti-government people who are like these like heavily armed right-wing militias always talk about government overreach and like how they're ready to take down the tyrannical government at any given point, because of the Second Amendment. That's the whole point, right? Allegedly. But here, apparently, there's a bunch of asterisks. A bunch of asterisks attached to it, where you actually can't, or if you do try to defend yourself, you'll get instantly clapped by the state. Didn't Kim Kardashian get robbed by people dressed as cops or without a tabloid? I have no idea to confirm that story, but it has happened where people dress up as police and stop people, pull people over, and yeah, so it's not like unheard of. It's not unheard of. So yeah, how am I supposed to know? Why is it my responsibility to kind of like wait and ask and figure out the intent of a person or persons who literally just busted down my door at 3 o'clock in the morning? That's not my responsibility. Therefore, no-knock warrants should be illegal. Full stop. There shouldn't be anything related to no-knock warrants. It should be gone, done away with. I think at the federal level, there should be some type of like law. I don't know if that's possible. That says across the board you can't do no-knock warrants. That's what the Fourth Amendment is? Yeah, but clearly that doesn't even one could argue we don't even have a Fourth Amendment technically. Jesus Christ, Skidadere. My brother-in-law was shot down at a bar by a security guard pretending to be a cop. The guy had been previously and then again later arrested for impersonating a cop, not the murder? What? Jesus. Shouldn't the discussion be about how the Fourth Amendment has been violated? There's several violations of human rights here. And constitutional violations that happened in this story alone. It's not just a Fourth Amendment issue, although arguably it is as well. Like that's like the cherry on top of all the other violations that happen here. Jesus Christ, the most like the most infuriating part about this whole story is that like his name wasn't even on the warrant. How do you not know? How do you execute a no-knock warrant and not even know where you're going or who's on it, or make sure that you're in the right place? Violation of the Fourth, among other things. Among other things. This is unbelievably frustrating. The Fourth Amendment doesn't exist due to Terry versus Ohio. The cops will say they're justified and suspicious. Yeah, exactly, Skidadere. One could argue that we don't really have necessarily a Fourth Amendment because there's so many asterisks and so many powers that we've given to the police. In Oregon, you can be tried for murder if you shoot a home invader because they must perish inside your home, or you can prove it was a home invasion. What? How, like... How does that make sense? There are obvious, like... So, I work in insurance, right? And for us to approve a claim, when it comes to, like, property being stolen or something like that, we usually have a requirement to show what we call, and this is a police language too, what we call visible signs of forced entry, right? And that is evidence to suggest that someone used force, someone tried to force that door open, someone tried to break that window open, someone tried to finagle that window open by force. There are physical evidence that is left behind to make that determination. That's why police have that terminology, visible signs of forced entry, which should be enough technically to prove that somebody did intend to invade your home or whatever. There are at least 1,000 Supreme Court rulings that will support the police in being afraid of nothing. True. Watch a training vid. They have to shoot. They train to shoot before asking questions. I'm not surprised. Actually, let me take a look here.
Law enforcement is to stop the threat. It's not to hurt someone. It's not to kill someone. It's to
Police get their basic training in Utah during 16 weeks at Peace Officer Standards and Training.
I've seen this.
Known as POST.
Oh my god, I've seen this. This is like crazy. This is ridiculous. I've seen this before. Check this out, chat.
They spend time inside the classroom and out, and towards the end go through 5 days of intensive scenario training. Salt Lake Tribune reporter Peyton Harkins and producer Abby Ellis were allowed to observe sessions over several months.
What is the most important thing we got to take care of when we first get any scene? Officer and scene safety.
Sergeant Scott Lauritsen oversees the scenario training at Post.
We continue our investigation.
The absolute most.
Yes, I've also heard that there was dubious circumstances as to which that warrant was made, and dubious circumstances that allowed that warrant to be in the first place. So, Jesus Christ.
Most important thing is officer safety. So all of the other procedural stuff that they learn will be at their own individual agencies. And so we really highlight that officer safety issue.
Do we allow people to point guns at us? No. We go home. Those that we're dealing with will go home if they choose to, right? But we go home.
Did you hear that? Those that we're dealing with get to go home if they choose to, but we go home. What?
Protect ourselves, protect our partners, protect those innocent bystanders.
Was there anything that happened during the argument?
Hey, why are the cops here?
The cadets are put through role-playing, from traffic stops,
You ran that stop sign over there.
domestic violence situations, to dealing with someone experiencing a mental health crisis.
We have role players and an evaluator. We have guidelines and kind of how we want the role players to respond to certain stimulus that the cadets are giving them.
Is there a weapon behind there?
I haven't seen one.
You don't know. Will our officer safety become laxed in these, or will it become heightened? But what are you seeing?
Relax. I just want to get down to his level of training.
Okay, so you're trying to be empathetic at the sacrifice of your officer safety.
And so as we're going through these different scenarios, we're trying to get them to understand the importance of, if I'm going to be safe, I have to understand everything that's going on around me.
Cassie, it's police. Come out and talk to us, would you?
We're not coming out.
You're not coming out?
The instructors push them to make life and death decisions.
Put the gun down. Cassie, can you put the gun down for me? You come out with whatever.
Mike Free.
No, stop. You see the problem here? What happened to our officer safety? Why are we not recognizing that as a gun pointed at us?
What?
When you think of a gun be pointed at you, what do you think? You think this, right? Do we think of this or this or whatever it is? Is that what we think of?
Seems casual.
This is exactly how situations happen where, again, you don't have all the information. And the story that comes to mind is that one that I told earlier, like years and years ago, where somebody at 3 o'clock in the freaking morning heard large banging on his door, got his weapon to protect himself because he had no idea, and then was immediately clapped by the police. Immediately. In fact, you know what? We can, that's right, Squad Wiper. We can look that story up. No, not Daniel Shaver. can't find the story. I'm gonna have to look this up. Yeah. Daniel Shaver was the dude we were talking about earlier, but there's another incident where they knocked on the door like at very, very early hours in the morning, and the dude was scared because obviously in the middle of the night, you're not gonna be the last thing you expect is that police like banging down on your door. Oh my god, I'm trying to remember. Trying to remember that story. Yes, the warrior mentality training, which was actually a thing that was done by a very, very, very dubious person. I forget his name who started this, which is in part responsible for this toxic culture. I sent for human rights. The police literally radicalized teenagers fresh out of high school. True, I believe violent police have been victims of childhood abuse and should be assessed, monitored, and given intensive therapy before even getting a badge. Yeah, I think that we should have better filtering services. Okay, so I can't find the story, but no worries.
Well, it doesn't seem threatening.
Okay.
Well, she's spinning it
And where is her finger?
on the trigger, right? But that's why.
So would you have shot?
That's really hard.
No.
Yeah, that's really hard, okay? Because you're having a potential mental health crisis where a person is not well and you're being taught to shoot first and then evaluate the situation? What?
It's not really hard.
It is hard for me.
It's really simple.
Because if I shot her and then I don't think.
Do you let a gun be pointed at you? Yes or no?
I want to say no, but.
Do you let a gun be pointed at your partner? Then what's the argument? Why is it so hard?
Because we have to live with it.
Yeah, because the training is like 5 days.
You're in the wrong profession, my friend, if you can't live with that.
If you can't live with shooting a citizen, if you can't live with the fact that you need to be comfortable with killing people, with shooting first and then answering and then asking questions, then you're in the wrong profession. Holy yikes, Batman. I mean, in regards to Constitution or any sort of law, ultimately the strength of the law is only equal to the strength of willpower that exists to enforce it. True. When it comes to people can rightly sense that there's a significant dilution of that document and its claims.
How many of you have made that decision? 1 out of 7. You are 3 weeks from that being a real gun, a real bullet, a real death. And you don't know if you can live with that? Wow. How many brothers do you have out here? How many sisters? They mean less to you than a mental subject.
What? Holy shit. Can we rewind that?
You're in the wrong profession, my friend, if you can't live with that. How many of you have made that decision?
Oh my god.
1 out of 7. You are 3 weeks from that being a real gun, a real bullet, a real death. And you don't know if you can live with that? Wow. How many brothers do you have out here? How many sisters? They mean less to you than a mental subject.
Newsflash, motherfucker. That's a person too.
You go home, you soul search, and you figure it out. And if that question hasn't been answered tomorrow, I suggest you don't come back.
Yeah, imagine what they say when the cameras
Being a
aren't
police
there.
officer, you may in your career be required to take a life. When you're faced with that situation, if you have not come
Jesus
to
Christ.
the reality that you may have to do that, and now you're processing through it, how effective is your decision going to be? So yeah, absolutely, to put on this badge and to put a gun on your hip to go into somebody's house to protect them, if you haven't made that decision that taking someone's life may be a possibility, it's too late then.
What?
We don't want to shoot people. Okay?
We don't want to shoot people. We don't want to shoot people. We're just saying that if you are presented in the situation where you can't establish like what the situation is, it's always better to shoot 10 and then you live with it, right? Because if you can't live with that, then you shouldn't be in this profession, according to that same guy.
But who makes that decision? Bear with me for a minute. When you picture criminal, what do you think? Have you pictured somebody you...
What? Wait. Literally, are they trying to take like away agency from the police? They're saying who decides if they get shot or not? Not us, not... What? Holy shit. Not even, Squad Wiper, not even. It's true that they don't want to shoot them. They want total obedience and absolute authority, so they shoot people who to preserve that. Jesus.
Love. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, can I kill a kid? Can I shoot a grandma? Can I shoot a mom? Can I shoot a dad? Can I shoot a brother? Because if you can't, it's not you that's going to get hurt, it's your partner.
Jesus Christ.
How many of you have been to
What? If I can't shoot a gram... What? Distance and dehumanize, and then you don't have to feel guilty for icing people. True.
an officer's funeral? How was it?
Not sure.
Did you know him?
I didn't.
How bad would that be if that was your partner and you knew that was your fault?
Life changing? Way worse.
Remember, folks, those people aren't people. Our partners are people. Our fellow Thin Blue Line are people, but everybody else is not a person. They're a subject. They're a mental health subject. They're a criminal. They're subjects.
Over the past 10 years, 15 police officers died on the job in Utah. 10 of them killed by a suspect.
As you're walking the halls doing these trainings, there's this giant memorial to all the officers in Utah who have been killed. It's massive. The wall is this physical reminder of what they learn in training.
And that's true, okay? That's true, and you know, very sad that there are instances where, you know, a police officer loses their life. But you can't use that to rub, you know, these new cadets in training, their face in that, and say that this is why you need to shoot first and ask questions later. Do you see now why we viewed these others as subjects, criminals, targets? Jesus Christ. That is so mental to have this, like, attitude. It's so strange that there's a conditioned environment exists where this is seen as normal. Yeah, they're normalized. That's exactly their job. Whereas that guy uses the same that you would say the guys during the trenches during the World War I, the nation at peace is no man's land. It resembles that if it doesn't need an army. Yep. Yep. But if every entity could and is corrupt, what can be done? Because a gun can kill you anywhere. I'm not sure what the point is. The point right here is the point is here that there is a clear and problematic, toxic culture with police. I feel like the country should be having the National Guard deployed, but because American excellence is still a thing, they rather just militarize the police. I don't know about that. That's I don't know about that. Instead of calling it a national emergency, I'd rather blame the citizens instead of their own tactics. I mean, yeah, but I don't think that you need to activate the National Guard always. I don't understand.
If you mess up, it means either your life could be taken or your partner's life could be taken. And you're taught you don't want your name to end up on this wall.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, call in the National Guard to disarm the police. Yeah, there you go, to demilitarize them. The thinking, the line of thinking should be backwards, right? The line of thinking is, you are there to do a job, and there will be circumstances that could be fatal to you, and you have to accept that up front, and understand that you're there to do a job, and unfortunately, there is a risk there.
You ready? All right, next up.
Many of the scenarios we observed would turn out to be worst case and end in a shooting.
I heard shots inside and I'm too afraid to go in there, please.
Like this one, where a woman calls 911 and says her husband and son have shot themselves.
Police, is anybody in there?
It's not long after the cadets show up that she ends up stabbing one of them.
Hey, get off!
Jesus Christ, what the heck?
Bang. Dispatch, we have an officer down, roll medical.
And her husband wakes up and starts firing at the others.
Bang, 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 bang.
And this one,
We're just going up with a warning today, okay?
where a routine traffic stop turned into a hostage situation.
Oh, please! Oh my God!
Hey,
Oh my God, please!
Hey, get out here.
Oh my God!
Hey,
No, no!
Every situation that we send police officers in doesn't require lethal force. But if we take an officer's career,
What?
how many situations are they going to be in, let's say, in a 20-year career? Thousands, right? But we only have these cadets for 5, 6 days, maybe 7 days at the most.
7 days? Jesus
So we
Christ.
have to take this experience of a 20-year career and condense that into a few days. And so we try and hit such a wide variety of scenarios to open their eyes to the possibility.
Right. Okay, but like, that's, you do realize that what you're telling them is that this is what it looks like in the real world. Jesus Christ.
But the focus on worst-case scenarios has become increasingly controversial among experts in the field who are concerned about police shootings.
Because what do you think is going to happen after their 10 days of training? 10 days, 7 days. No, I disagree. I disagree. That's ridiculous. Squad wiper, that's ridiculous. If you only have 7 days, and the only thing that's been ingrained into your training is that these are the worst case scenarios, you're gonna see that in everything. This frontline video seems to scare everyone. Why guns should be last resort? Yeah, I mean, guns should be, absolutely. That's the whole point of a gun. The whole point of a gun is to activate that lethal force because you have no other choice. That's literally the only reason you're pulling out that gun. It's because you're left with no other choice.
We would call fear-based training is the training on the possibility of an action versus the probability of an action.
Correct. Correct.
Randy Shrewsbury worked as a police officer in multiple departments around the country. He now advocates for reforming police training. We showed him some of the scenarios we filmed at Post.
Part of the problem that we have resides in this scenario-based training because it's this kind of endless exploration of what could happen, for which then officers in every circumstance of their job is feeling some level of threat. But the problem becomes is that when you're reacting to anecdotes or to situations that could possibly happen, you start to kind of create a narrative into the officer's mind, which is placing them on edge.
Get on the ground or I'm going to shoot you! Get out!
What?
Get on the ground now!
Hands are up. Black Lives Matter, you guys know the drill. Why did you shoot?
What?
Because large guys, they jumped out of the vehicle, they're both coming at us.
Is this death or serious bodily injury?
No.
Why is our gun our first resort?
Panic button.
The reality is that policing is safe as it's ever been. So it doesn't match up to this disproportionate emphasis that we place when we're constantly telling officers that at any moment they can be murdered, at any moment that they can be killed.
We brought these critiques to the director of Utah's Post program.
I don't know if that's like fair. They're in a physical war with anybody who's not them. Squad wiper. I don't know what woke has to do with it. I mean, do we know if Mr. Locke was ever a quote woke? I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Scott Stevenson.
Is it possible that by training with worst case scenarios, cadets go out into the field with a heightened sense of paranoia, seeing threats where there might not actually be threats?
I think it's a valid observation, but I do not believe so. How would you want us to train? If
like normal human beings, like seeing the citizenry as people? The fuck kind of answer is that?
if those situations are so infrequent, do you want somebody going in without any type of experience at all? And if so, how do you expect them to perform? We put officers in ugly situations. We really do.
How often?
And then we expect it to be perfect every time. If I can teach them in that situation where the potential outcome is a shooting, then maybe they'll try to avoid it.
No, it's the opposite. We just saw you do a drill where the officer's reasoning for why firing the gun first was because they, quote, walked towards me. I'll show you what your training teaches them.
Of threat But the problem becomes is that when you're reacting to anecdotes or to situations that could possibly happen, you start to kind of create a narrative into the officer's mind, which is placing them on edge.
This is what you're training.
I'm going to shoot you.
This is the outcome. Right here, my friend. And this means the public are hostile to them, but because the public are hostile to them, they dig in more and feel more vulnerable. That makes interactions more intense. More tense, and the loop continues. There's an argument, I believe, that the police officers should work on rotations rather than constantly responding to high violence situations. True. An idea. But also, like, whose fault is it that people feel this way, right? Whose fault is it? Is it that the populace kind of feels that way? And then therefore, follow-up question, whose responsibility it is to rectify that? That would be the police. Okay?
Get out! Get on the ground now!
Hands are up. Black Lives Matter. You guys know the drill.
Why did you shoot?
Because large guys, they jumped out of the vehicle.
Then you shouldn't be a police officer. If this is your reaction to, quote, large guys jumping out of a vehicle, which, by the way, it didn't seem like they were jumping and running towards them. It wasn't a scenario where the guy jumped out of the vehicle and ran towards them to try to tackle the woman, right? It was a scenario where the dude was walking with his hands up. And her instinct was to freak out, panic button, pull out your gun, panic button, shoot, and then say get down. Jesus Christ, this person shouldn't be a police officer. Why is she there? That's right. Sure. James. Yeah, I don't know what that was about. Just Black Lives Matter, you all know the drill. Like, what is that? What is the implication there? Do you, like, are you supposed to shoot first if they say BLM or something? What the hell is this? Holy yikes.
Both coming at us.
Is this death or serious bodily injury?
No.
Shoot.
I'm going to shoot you.
Officers,
Does that sound like somebody running towards them? Somebody jumping out of the car and running towards them?
Some level of threat. But the problem becomes is that when you're reacting to anecdotes or to situations that could possibly happen, you start to kind of create a narrative.
Do you see what she said, though? Like, and this is how they get away with it, too. Do you see what she said?
Into the officer's mind, which is placing them on edge.
Get on the ground or I'm going to shoot you. Get out! Get on the ground now!
So that dude already got arrested, right?
You guys know the drill.
Why did you shoot?
Why did you shoot?
Because large guys, they jumped out of the vehicle. They're both coming at us.
They're both coming at us. Did that look like the situation where they both jumped out of the car and came at us? Because that has the implication that she had a fear for her life, right? Because they're coming at me. I didn't have any other choice. Did that look? In reality, did that look like that? And this is common. She shot him in the chest and yelled, "Get on the ground," right? Like, this is unbelievable to me, and I'm sure that this is the justification that is used for quite often. Or that I call it, they came at us. Alright, buddy. Sure. She completely fabricated that imaginary threat as a gut reaction to shoot, right? And that's what they say, and that's what's written in the report, right? They jumped out of the car, and they came at us. That's not what happened. The other suspect was already arrested by her partner. I don't know if you can see that. He's already being put in the police car. This is the, quote, real-life scenario training that they're doing. See that? That's the partner. He's already inside the, he already arrested the guy, right? You could see it right here. They're kind of struggling.
Which is placing them on edge.
They're struggling. He puts hands behind his back. He's already neutralized. He's already done. What's fake? Me? I'm a deep fake. But this is how it's justified. Because this is how it's trained. They're trained. This is how they're trained. Oh, they're fake. They're like blank guns.
Black Lives Matter, you guys know the drill! Why did you shoot?
Because large guys, they jumped out of the vehicle.
Oh, they're paintball guns. Okay. Yeah, so this person shouldn't be a police officer. I wonder if she graduated. This person shouldn't be a police officer. Period. Full stop. They have paintball guns where CO2 moves aside and makes it feel like a real gun when you shoot it. Gotcha. This is beyond wild. Okay, that makes sense, Pirate Ninja. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's chilling to hear that so many cops get this type of training, get this type of mentality. It would make sense. Because remember, it doesn't matter. If it kind of looks like a gun, then you are apparently, according to this training, you're supposed to think that it's pointed at you and you shoot first. Alright, folks. Just to take a quick break from that, let's go over to, let's get some cute animal videos going, right? Let's get a cute animal video going.
We had no...
Wait, is that a baby on the field? Defensive linemen are playing peekaboo.
Harris now appears to be burping.
What? A Geico commercial? Get out of here. No, stop it. That's adorable. Aww.
Come here. Come on. Come on.
Aww. That is so cute. So messed up that it make it dangerous to be a kid when it's the last time you get to be carefree, supposedly, right? You would think. That's so cute. Alright folks, we need to talk about this because if you guys haven't been on this channel for quite some time, or if you're new to the channel, a lot of what we talk about or center our advocacy is for climate change. And we always try to bring attention to the climate crisis in whatever ways we can, or cover news articles in whatever ways we can. So I always like to make sure we bring that up. World's glaciers contain less ice than thought. The revised estimate reduces global sea level rise by 3 inches if all glaciers were to melt, but raises concern for some communities that rely on seasonal melt. Advances in satellite technology have revealed that the world's glaciers contain significantly less ice than previously thought. According to a study published in Nature Geoscience on Monday, the revised estimate reduces global sea level rise by 3 inches if all glaciers were to melt, but it raises concerns for some communities that rely on seasonal melt for glaciers to feed rivers and irrigate crops. If glaciers contain less ice, water will run out sooner than expected. While some ice naturally melts throughout the year, rising temperature due to climate change are speeding up glacier retreat. Between 2000 and 2019, these rivers of ice lost roughly 5.4 trillion tons. Jesus. Countries are already struggling with disappearing glaciers. Peru is investing in desalination to make up for declining freshwater, and Chile hopes to create artificial glaciers in its mountains. But we had quite a poor understanding of how much ice is actually stored in the glaciers, said lead study author Romain Millen, a glaciologist at University Grenoble Alps. Past analyses, for example, double-counted glaciers among the peripheries of the Greenland and Antarctic sheets, overestimating ice volume. The Nature Geoscience study assessed how quickly glaciers were moving across the landscape or their velocity. Such measurements allowed scientists to more accurately measure volume, as the way glacier flow indicates where ice is thick or thin. But collecting this information has been limited by technology. High-resolution satellites deployed in recent years, however, allowed for the first analysis of how 90% of the world's glaciers are moving, from small glaciers in the Andes up to massive glaciers in Svalbard and Patagonia. The work analyzed more than 800,000 pairs of images of glaciers taken between 2017 and 2018 and found that many were shallower than previously assessed. Scientists now estimate there's a 20% less glacial ice present, with the potential to melt in the ocean and raise sea levels. Currently, glaciers are responsible for 1 millimeter of annual sea rise, or 30% of the yearly increase. This is one of the first really impressive results coming out from satellite advances, said Daniel Ferranati, a glaciologist at the ETH Zurich, not involved in the research. Milans and his colleague also found that Asia's Himalayas contain 30% more ice than previously estimated, while South America's Andean glaciers contain roughly 27% less ice. Already produced glaciers have lost 40% of their surface area since the 70s. This will put more pressure on freshwater in the Andes. On the contrary, water will be more secure in Himalayas. Yeah, so new data for the ice glaciers. It's pointing that maybe we didn't have everything squared away as we thought. And there's even less fresh water than we predicted. That's basically what it's advising, that the actual amount of water is a lot less in some areas, which could possibly be problematic for water security. So are you doing overtime today? A little bit. Not too much, though. Not too much. Because we still have one more video. And yeah, that's going to be a problem. That's definitely going to be a problem in some areas.
You gonna bring it back? I didn't think so.
Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beckosphere, where we talk
Even
about
if it doesn't
climate news and solutions.
become Kevin Costner's best roles, we still have to deal with the planet warming. True. This is just one of the myriad of different problems and different aspects of climate change and environmental degradation that we're dealing with. Kuwait saw 130 degree Fahrenheit wet bulb temperature last year. Yep, I believe it. There have been numerous records being broken. All that methane. Yes, there is a lot of permafrost pockets that have methane as well. Yes, permafrost that have methane as well. Not only that, a lot of these oil and fossil fuel rigs that have been just abandoned are leaking a lot of methane. We also have the animal agriculture industry leaking a lot of methane. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
You have entered the Climate Recap, where we look at what is being done to mitigate the impacts of and prepare for climate change. If you would like to stay up to date with one of the most important topics facing humanity, I highly suggest you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss every...
I have no idea, to be quite honest. Squad Wiper, I am very unfamiliar with foreign international news, so I can only say so much. I'm not sure. The Syrian glaciers are going to be affected by this? I have no idea. Syrian mountains?
single time I post. No pressure, of course. I realize when I say that that's probably a lot of pressure. This time, we'll be covering the news from January 17th to 31st. Let's start with the events relating to the climate changing. Rapid ice melt around volcanically active areas might increase the likelihood of eruptions, according to a new study published in the Geological Society of America. While there's plenty of room for more research on why this is the case, researchers looked back at several thousands of years into Iceland's past and found this pattern. Great! Another natural disaster made worse by climate change. Also, the recent eruption in Tonga is unlikely to make a dent in the overall warming trend. I say this because volcanic eruptions and the subsequent increase of air particles in the atmosphere usually reduce the sun's warming of Earth. Mass volcanic eruptions have caused ice ages in the past, but this one eruption will not have the power to do anywhere near as much as we would need. Speaking of the cold, the U.S. East Coast got buried in snow for the second half of January, knocking out power in at least 9 states. New York also experienced severe thunderstorm warnings, and Florida got a random winter tornado from the strong gusts blowing over the coast.
True.
I haven't seen any formal attribution claims of climate change when regarding this storm, but the power outages are a great example of how weak our current infrastructure for energy is.
I'll chime in here. There was a study that basically pointed in the direction that a lot of these bomb cyclones are going to be worse due to climate change. Their severity is going to be increased due to climate change.
On the other side of the world, Storm Anna has killed at least 88 people in East Africa, specifically Madagascar.
I don't know what that is. Are you okay, buddy? Do you think Whoosh? What is that? You joined Twitch 4 days ago. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Can somebody in chat elaborate, please? Jesus Christ. Oh my god. I wish I didn't look that up. Yeah, get fucked. Fuck off. I really wish I didn't look that up. Fuck off. Piece of shit.
Madagascar, Mozambique, and Malawi. Geez, what does Anna have against M names? Every area impacted experienced major flooding. Storms are becoming stronger and more frequent in this part of the world due to climate change warming the local waters. Cyclone Batsirai is expected to hit Madagascar in the next few days. Changing things up a bit, lumber prices in the US are off the rails again, currently worth about $1,200 per 1,000 board feet. The historical average is
I know real way to elaborate other than
per
yeah,
1,000 board
for
feet.
sure. I looked it up and I really wish I had it. Now I know. Gotta add that one to the not so subtle dog whistle now that I reread it. What a piece of shit.
So that's about as crazy as if a gallon of gas was worth $12. This rise in price is due to climate change, which has increased wildfires and pest activity, like bark-eating beetles, specifically in Canada, where the US gets most of its lumber supply. Last year, the price of lumber went as high as $1,700 per 1,000 board feet, beating out the value of gold and Bitcoin. Climate change is making Florida's red tides worse. Red tides happen when the Carenia brevis, a red phytoplankton, multiplies rapidly in response to an influx of chemicals, usually coming from runoff from stormwater, agricultural lands, or wastewater treatment plants. They can cause irritation and respiratory issues in humans and mass die-off in marine animals. Florida is still seeing the impacts of a recent event that killed off a huge number of the manatee population. Florida's recent task force determined that climate change could worsen this event with warmer water temperatures, sea level rise, changes in salinity, etc. Environmental activists were disappointed, though, that there were no recommendations to decrease fossil fuel use or to increase clean energy deployment, or even to curb chemical runoff for that matter. Quote, the task force has ignored the elephant in the room because state regulators are not holding the polluting industries accountable through enforcement action. The last thing I want to mention for this...
just to add to that as well, Florida's notorious for this, to be quite honest. Florida's notorious for this. Politicians have repeatedly failed, time and time again, to hold these large industries accountable. They don't enforce regulation, or oftentimes it's a slap in the wrist. There's been numerous attempts to even suppress climate change information or information affecting ecosystems, up to and including silencing scientists who attempt to bring this up to attention. Yeah. One instance that comes to mind was a friend of my brother, who is a climate researcher, was effectively silenced because he wanted to publish a study that basically predicted a massive fish die-off in Florida. And when he brought this up, he was told to stop talking about it, was never able to be published, and lo and behold, almost a decade later, there was a huge, massive fish die-off because of agriculture runoff. And the mayor, who called the university and told them to keep this guy quiet, was surprised Pikachu facing when it happened.
Section is just the continuous studies that have come out on how climate change causes birth complications, premature labor, and health problems for babies and kids. I'm going to leave some articles in the source section linked in the description, but I also do plan to cover the health impacts for kids in my next deep dive, where I will talk about the birth strike movement and what human population growth means for the climate crisis. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, let's get into the climate victory section, which I had a really hard time narrowing down. First, let's talk about offshore wind. The Vietnam renewable firm Trung Nam Group launched its first offshore wind farm off the southern province of Tra Vinh. Over in Scotland, Crown Estate Scotland held the first part of the country's largest offshore wind auction, raising almost $1 billion, or around 700 million pounds. The program, called Scot Wind, will feature 25 turbines, which will be a mix of floating and fixed, with an installed capacity of 100 megawatts. The space auctioned can support 10 gigawatts of energy capacity and will create tens of thousands of jobs. Scotland currently has 1 gigawatt worth of offshore wind off their coast right now. Some of the auction winners for this time include Shell, BP, and the utility company Iberdrola. I'm so conflicted about fossil fuel companies buying offshore wind space because, on one hand, it's a good sign to see companies moving towards clean energy source, and offshore oil rig jobs can easily transfer to offshore wind jobs. But at the same time, I hate fossil fuel companies, and I don't want to see them in our clean energy future, mainly because I just don't trust them about as far as I can throw their execs, which is not far at all. The UK government has allocated an additional £32 million to specifically floating wind projects. Fun fact relating to UK wind energy generation in general, this one specifically having to do with onshore wind. The UK wind produced a record amount of power during Storm Malik. Notice how with fossil fuels, storms can result in spills, but with wind, it can actually produce more power. Just an observation. Back to offshore winds for a sec though, but this time in the US, I came across an article by marine geophysicist and Lamont research professor David Goldberg, who talked about the possibility of attaching direct air capture technology to offshore winds along the East Coast. He argued that the turbines can power the carbon capture technology using otherwise wasted energy, and the captured carbon can then be stored in natural marine reserves. The article, of course, will be linked in the description below, but if you're interested in me interviewing David about this idea in a future video, please let me know in the comment section below, because it does sound like a really interesting solution. Now over to Ecuador. The government has increased the sea life protection around the Galapagos Islands. Fishermen will no longer be able to fish in more than 200,000 square miles of ocean next to the archipelago. And these protections, combined with Costa Rica's recent increase in protection zones around the Cocos Islands, will create a marine highway. Overall, Ecuador, Costa Rica, Panama, and Colombia are all working to link their marine reserves together.
Ecuador, Colombia, and Costa Rica are doing miles of work more than we are. So you're telling me that Big Daddy Trump lied about the windmill cancer? Sorry to bust your bubble, my friend.
Very, very cool. Now for some US-based climate victories. A Washington, D.C. district federal judge has shot down a recent Gulf of Mexico oil lease sale by the Biden administration, deeming all those sales unconstitutional because the decision didn't properly consider environmental impact.
I went over this story, actually. It's so sad that the Biden administration was so gave up so easily and just kind of bent the knee that quickly.
It will now be up to the Department of the Interior to reassess the sale decision. Could we auction off offshore wind there instead?
Maybe.
The same companies that would bid for those are bidding for this. So, I mean, over the last several months, fossil fuel companies and Republican public officials have challenged the EPA's power, specifically when it comes to the Clean Air Act.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, the EPA could add greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitric oxide to a list of harmful air pollutants they can regulate. But this is a big no-no for fossil fuel sympathizers. So they're putting the EPA's power to regulate air pollution as a whole.
Remember, Biden has tried to
question.
make policy with the likes of MTG. True. No, I'm literally saying that Biden was so quick, or so like there was like zero fight from the Biden administration to attempt to even look like they care. They just gave these oil companies those leases without much of a fight.
And this case is currently being heard by the conservative Supreme Court. It would be really bad if the EPA loses its power around this, though, because it would definitely set the US back in human health things.
Yeah.
Well,
among other
recently,
things.
top environmental groups, public health groups, clean energy groups, and several utility companies.
There are also several ramifications that have been attempted when it comes to OSHA and all this other stuff. Basically, the ripple effect or domino effect of these cases or suits is to then say, well, these government entities don't actually have any enforceable power whatsoever. And of course, that's on purpose because, well, they don't want governmental regulations. These companies, these large corporations,
have sent a combined letter to the Supreme Court in support of the EPA's power. We will have to see if this makes a difference in the decision making. And now to the news headlines paid for by the infrastructure bill. The EPA announced it will conduct unannounced inspections of chemical plants, refineries, and other industrial sites over the next several months, specifically around disadvantaged communities like in Cancer Alley. If you don't know what I'm talking about with Cancer Alley, I covered it in a deep dive video, which I will link up above. They also plan to address horrible water conditions in areas like Jackson, Mississippi. The Biden administration also announced the Buildings Performance Standard Coalition with 33 states and cities to improve efficiency
imagine
and
a world where Biden and Republicans weren't owned by the same people. True. At least when it comes to the fossil fuel industry, there's just so much links there that it's like indistinguishable. Is there a lot Biden can do? Certainly more than this.
Of municipalities makes up about 20% of the country's building footprint, and all parties involved agreed to up the regulations or legislation by Earth Day 2024. Some areas involved include Colorado, Washington State, New York City, LA, Chicago, Philly, and Washington, D.C. Here are a few other spending plans announced over the last 2 weeks that I'm just not going to go into detail on. The Army Corps of Engineers announced $1.1 billion for Everglades restoration. They have also been given $14 billion to tackle clean energy supply chain problems. The Interior has $4.7 billion to begin cleaning up orphaned wells. The Department of...
We went over that, which then begs the question, why are we the ones spending billions of dollars cleaning up their mess? You know? There should be a lot of repercussions for that. all this energy, resources, and time spent should be billed back to these companies who are the problem, right? Fix the problem now, and then bill them or tax them or whatever.
Of transportation got $27 billion to fix bridges and improve climate resilience in different areas. And the Biden administration also announced $50 billion to go towards reducing wildfire risk and improve preparedness near at-risk areas. Now here are some other climate victory headlines from the last 2 weeks of January. Remember to wait to the end of the video for my favorite climate victory point. In international news, Scotland announced a new transportation blueprint to move the country towards cleaner methods of transportation. UK cities are expected to impose a levy on cars in general, and London's mayor proposed a journey charge for motorists traveling to the city. New York should implement that. Sales of electric vehicles surpassed diesel in Europe for the first time this past December. Also in the UK, British Volt got a £100 million boost to build the UK's first large-scale battery gigafactory. Over to Norway, the online grocery store Oda introduced a carbon footprint metric to their receipts, and now its customers are starting to shun red meat. And a new coral reef was discovered off the coast of Tahiti, and it's deep enough in the ocean to not be impacted yet by global warming.
Wow.
I forgot to also mention that Israel has okayed $720 million to plant trees in cities, and Greece is using the remainder of its COVID funds for climate mitigation and preparation.
In the US, Native American groups in California and Nevada gained new control of public lands. A national monument has been proposed in Nevada to preserve a sacred site, and Save the Redwoods League donated 523 acres of forest land to the Intertribal Stoconi Wilderness Council in California. LA announced that it will be moving away from oil drilling in the city. A bipartisan group of federal legislators announced a new climate adaptation bill. A House panel continues probing into big oil's history of LA announced that it will be moving according to a new study published in Vacation. $523 acres of forest land to the Intertribal Stoconi Wilderness Council in California. LA announced.
Yeah, you see that picture? Like, it is amazing to me that there are people who unironically make the argument that windmills or other renewable energy are a eyesore, who unironically make that argument and then like look at this picture and are like completely fine. Good memes. We really need a nationwide law stating that police must be from the city that they are policing. That's a great idea.
Announced that it will be moving away from oil drilling in the city. A bipartisan group of federal legislators announced a new climate adaptation bill. A House panel continues probing into big oil's history of climate disinformation. A climate lawsuit in Baltimore, Maryland is the longest lasting non-federal case alleging climate disinformation by big oil, was heard by the federal judge. The results could make a landmark case. More than 450 scientists have called on different PR and creative agencies to drop their fossil fuel clients. You might remember how Edelman, the largest PR firm in the world, announced that it would look at ways to green its portfolio. Update? We have no update. Car companies ran 4 times as many EV
What?
TV
You mean like companies lie? You mean companies state publicly they want to do something and then they turn around and do the other thing? No way.
commercials in the US in 2021 compared to 2020. And Lafayette Square and Invenergy launched a $500 million joint venture, Radioactivate, to help lower income houses get involved in community solar. Told you there was a lot. Now let's get to the section that I have now named It's Whatever, which has developed over the last 2 recaps. Basically, these are the news points that I consider good and bad for the environment. You'll see what I mean. Exxon announced that it will reach net zero emissions by 2050. Of course, it's just the scope 1 and 2 emissions, which negates emissions made by their product. So,
which is like 90%.
Also,
this means, wait, no, this should be titled like, how companies lie to you and then have the audacity to say that they're doing good stuff. Okay? No, scope 3 is like the massive like amount of the emissions, because that's the downstream of their product. You can't ignore that. Right. This week in Exxon virtue signaling, calls climate, read the headline, calls climate disinformation. So here's a tacit admission that they do engage in climate disinformation. So that's a nice admission. And then they have the audacity to call it freedom of speech. Good memes.
Exxon recently has been under scrutiny for using the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, as a defense for its history of climate disinformation. I'm sorry, what the fuck? East Africa has received...
Yeah, so basically, like, the whole takeaway from this entire, like, headline is that they admit that they've been doing it. Guys, this isn't like a wild conspiracy theory, right? How flagrant is that? That they literally are comfortable admitting that, oh, well, you know, maybe disinformation. Remember, it all started off as different points of view. We just have different points of view, and we need to hear all sides of the argument. And now they're like, oh yeah, we do actually actively engage in climate disinformation. And what? So what if we did? It's part of our free speech or whatever. Corporations aren't people. How are they protected by free speech? Well, in this country, they are. Very good system.
Received £17 million from the UK to help them combat climate disasters. I think that's probably good timing considering that Storm Anna just hit and soon Cyclone
Batsirai
will also hit. Initially good, but the reason why I put this in the just whatever category is that it's much less than the $100 million promised by developed countries forever ago. And overall, less than half of the most climate vulnerable countries have received any money to help them. Only 13 out of 22 African countries owed money have received anything.
Gross.
So, not necessarily a knock on the UK, but just kind of a knock on the whole thing. Australia's Prime Minister Morrison has allocated another $100 billion to the Great Barrier Reef restoration, which is great, except for the fact that the administration still doesn't recognize the biggest threat to the reefs: climate change. And experts warned that they expect another mass bleaching event
Good
in
first
the Great
experience
Barrier
in
Reef
stream, good
soon.
subject matter, good conversation. Hey, I appreciate that. That's always nice to hear. Thank you.
Its foreign minister to host COP27, Sameh Shoukry, has zero.
It is really just pennies. It is really just pennies. 17 million. And remember, they were promised 100 million, and like other countries were also supposed to receive aid that they never got. I mean, Jesus Christ. So COP27, the host of COP27 has zero climate policy experience. But his deputy is a climate scientist. Okay.
Zero experience in climate policy, but at least his deputy will be well experienced. Climate scientist Yasmin Fawad was the lead author of the 2017 IPCC reports chapter on desertification.
Oh, nice. Actually, that's pretty cool.
And she co-chaired financial talks for COP26. So it's whatever, because the guy in charge doesn't have any experience, but his deputy has a lot of experience. So President Biden officially announced defeat over the Build Back Better Act, and his administration is now planning to put different pieces of the $1.75 trillion plan into...
Hey, look at that. We got we got none of it. Holy shit. Yay. Look at that. How much was this? A year and something? Wasn't it like, well, we'll be kind. Like almost a year. And all this effort, negotiations, back and forth, concessions, concession after concession after concession. This is a really long-winded way of telling everybody to get fucked.
Different chunks to be sent through the system.
Yeah,
and
which is not going to happen, by the way. It's just not going to happen.
Financial firms can't seem to make up their mind over divestment. On one hand, Aviva investors announced that it will vote to kick out firm directors that don't support sustainability goals, similar to what BlackRock said that they will do. The
Absolute
UK's
failure.
largest private pension fund,
nothing.
USS, shifted £5 billion away from polluters, reducing emissions associated with its holdings by 30%. Citigroup in the US announced its plans to move to net zero emissions by 2050. That's all great, right? Well, at the same time, BlackRock, which kind of popularized the whole divestment trend, and Citigroup have now stated that divesting funds from fossil fuels is not a good move. They argue that it will make the clean energy transition rockier and basically revoked their capitalist influence. Capitalism is the power to shape society and act as a powerful catalyst for change. But businesses can't do this alone, and they cannot be the climate police. Okay, so the US private sector revokes its responsibility, and the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, has said that he doesn't think that the Reserve has much power to regulate where he does.
I'm sorry,
alone,
this is just...
and they cannot
wait.
be the...
Hold on. Mind you, this is coming from... This is coming from the CEO of BlackRock, okay? So... Hold on. Capitalism has the power to shape society and act as a powerful catalyst for change. Says the system that keeps producing the same iPhone, says the system that wants to offer based on subscription services features for your car. What? You can't make this argument anymore, okay? You can't make this argument anymore. This is laughable at best.
Climate police. Okay, so the US private sector revokes its responsibility, and the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, has said that he doesn't think that the Reserve has much power to regulate where funds go. Quote, "Our role on climate change is a limited one, but it's an important one. It's to ensure that the banking institutions that we regulate understand their risks and can manage them." So who's in charge of getting taxpayer money out of fossil fuels? You see why all those were kind of meh points? Okay,
No, they're objectively bad. I'm sorry.
Now let's get on to the full-on
good memes. So we can't ask the private sector to necessarily be the sole arbiter of this, even though they're the ones that are solely responsible for this. But also, our hands are tied. And from a governmental standpoint, our hands are tied. We have cases in the Supreme Court attempting to rip powers out of regulatory agencies. Oh yeah, it's going great, guys. It's going great, guys.
Starting off strong with our two favorite C words, China and coal. China broke its record for coal output for the month of December and for a year for 2021. I know that's mainly due to the energy crisis, but that is just really not the right direction. Unsurprisingly, the global seaborne coal trade rose 5.7% in 2021, and also unsurprisingly, a giant methane plume has emerged over the Jiangxi province, the largest coal province in China. On to oil. Mexican's president has decided to buy a Texas oil refinery to gain energy independence. Obrador wants to
Jesus Christ, this language is so unbelievably triggering. Do you know what would be the best way to ensure energy independence? Yeah, it's to make sure that you have investments and move towards renewable energy. Yeah, that would achieve energy independence. The faster you get to your ability to be able to have renewable resources, like solar, which doesn't depend on any other country, it depends on your infrastructure, to have wind and all this other geothermal and all this other renewable energy that are quite cheap, quite readily available. That is achieving energy independence, right? Right, exactly right. What could be more energy independent than having your country being powered by renewables?
Mexican oil exports in the next 2 years. But instead of investing in clean energy, he's going to pay $596 million to rehabilitate the country's oil industry. Mexico's previous president pledged in 2004 to have clean energy represent a third of the country's energy generation by 2024. But Obrador has allegedly undone a lot of these efforts. In the UK, a judge has determined that the UK oil regulator is not legally required to consider tax breaks to oil and gas companies or emissions from burning fossil fuels, aka Scope 3 emissions, when regulating the North Sea sector. So basically, there's nothing to see over there. Okay, so do you all remember during COP26 how many countries, including where most of the rainforests were, signed a reforestation pledge? And then Indonesia backing out of it at the last minute? Well, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I did a video on COP26. Indonesia has the third largest spread of rainforests in the world and is, like Brazil, cutting it down to make room for palm oil. Okay, well, it turns out that Indonesia might have gotten cold feet in the conference because Norway underpaid reforestation efforts in 2010. So it wasn't priced comparable to palm oil sales. Apparently, if Norway paid Indonesia based on the carbon taken up by the trees that they saved, they should have paid a lot more money than they did. But I guess maybe on the bright side, if we can convince them to get back into the agreement because we will pay the proper price, then that might be good, maybe. Now, we can't finish off this section without heading back home. In the US, the Forest Service has proposed a new plan that would quadruple the logging along the Appalachian Trail. In addition to being the nation's most popular forest, it also contains a lot of old-growth trees, which take up way more carbon than reforested areas. This goes against Biden's plans to conserve 30% of federal land and waters by 2030 and his pledge to reduce deforestation. So, no bueno. Here are the other articles I found interesting from the last 2 weeks of January.
Very nice way of putting it. Yeah. Just tell these companies, no, fuck off. That's it.
Both of them are US-based. Arizona Cooperation Commission narrowly voted down a bill that would have pushed the state towards 100% clean energy. Alaska ruled against youths on a climate change lawsuit. Time for the fossil fuel fails, besides, contributing to climate change. Gotta remember that they suck locally too. Peru declared a state of emergency after 21 beaches were polluted with oil linked to the Tonga eruption.
Jesus
The oil
Christ.
came from a damaged Spain-based Repsol refinery. Over to diesel, a pipeline owned by Collins Pipeline Co. leaked 300,000 gallons of diesel next to New Orleans, Louisiana. The operators
okay, so again, why are these companies still allowed to operate? Like, the Spanish company who owns this should be the ones paying for all of this. Jesus Christ.
Repairs. What is it with fossil fuel and utility companies delaying needed repairs? The spill was actually
I can answer that one. Profit.
discovered December 27th, but it wasn't made publicly known until recently.
There's no need for you to address your infrastructure or anything like that unless it's absolutely the last resort. This has been true for almost every company. This has been true here in the United States with PG&E having a massive infrastructure failure which caused wildfires, massive infrastructure failures in Texas because they do not care. They don't want to waste a single iota to take care of their infrastructure because God forbid they waste a single penny. It's all for the sake of profit. They don't care.
Now on to gas. A small study of cooktops, ovens, and broilers in 53 California homes found that stoves leak an estimated 0.8 to 1.3% of the gas they consume as unburned methane. There's 40 million stoves in the US homes last counted, which was 2015. So that definitely adds up. Living near fracking sites can result in premature death among elderly people
No way.
living downstream or nearby, according to the...
And do companies care? Are companies forced to consider these health risks? Are companies being fined, being removed from these areas? No. Very good system.
The first major study on this subject. At least 17.6 million people live near a well in the US. People who live near or downstream from plants experience worse air and water quality, as well as noise and light pollution. And people were more likely to die prematurely.
But yes, please tell me about the massive eyesore a wind farm can produce.
Closer they live to a plant, regardless of racial, socioeconomic, and other environmental variables. So it's definitely the plant that's doing that. That being said, fossil fuel plants have historically been put next to communities of color, so this issue can easily be classified as an environmental justice one. And now to carbon capture technology. A Global Witness report stated that Shell's massive carbon capture plant is emitting more than it's capturing. Located in Alberta, Canada, the company's first green plant is emitting the equivalent of 1.2 million gas-powered cars, more specifically from its process of refining tar sands into hydrogen. It's also emitting methane. Shell didn't respond to these findings. In other fossil fuel fails, scientists have declared that we've officially passed the planet's chemical boundary with all the plastics, antibiotics, agricultural chemicals, industrial compounds, and of course, fossil fuels that we have put into our environment.
Very good, very good.
We have already altered the Earth out of a balance that it's been in for 10,000 years. Humans are very talented, but this doesn't mean that it can't get better or worse, so we should pick the better side. Okay, it's time for my favorite climate victory point of the week. The community solar company Pearl X and the solar power product vendor Solar
When you complain
Edge
about fossil fuels hurting you physically, and their argument back is the alternative looks ugly. Yeah. I mean, all these companies should be held to account, and either if they can't switch to renewables, then they should not exist at this point. There's no meaningful plan that sets us on path to try to decouple ourselves from fossil fuels in as many ways as possible and as quickly as possible now. If they don't have a plan, then they shouldn't be in business. Honestly, at this point, like the destruction, the level of destruction, the level of human damage, human health, not only to elderly people, but to young people, to babies and all this other stuff, the pollution in our water, at this point, they can unequivocally get fucked. So if they cannot or have no legitimate plan to remove themselves from fossil fuels, clean up what they did, then they shouldn't be in business.
Started a new program called Project Tech Flex to solve
The government already has to spend billions of dollars cleaning up their shit anyways.
that pesky multifamily problem. The problem is that it's hard for landlords and tenants to tap into economic benefits of adding solar when it has to do with like apartment buildings and stuff. So the companies are planning to give a small apartment in Houston solar panels and battery storage, making themselves the energy supplier and the landlords the utility holders for the tenants to pay. The tenant gets lower utility costs and a backup system for grid outages, the landlord gets paid, and Pearl X gets money from selling excess energy back to the grid. This project also encourages microgrids, which are more secure and resilient than larger grids.
I'm curious how municipal water services clean microplastics from water. Well, methinks they don't.
Can respond to signals from utilities or energy markets, so it's more of a self-healing system, kind of like the game theory grid method that I talked about in the last climate recap. So that was my favorite climate victory point. I think it's a really cool idea. And that was the climate recap from January 17th to 31st. Please let me know in the comments below which you found the most interesting. And if you are interested in this kind of content, remember to please like and subscribe. Sorry this video is a little late, but it's actually my birthday weekend. I am officially old enough to rent a car with lower insurance. That's the coolest thing you get for being 25, I think. Until next time, remember to talk about the climate crisis every single day and to support your local news organizations. A big thank you to the people.
True. Well, first and foremost, happy birthday to the Beckett Sphere. That's pretty cool. Removal is near impossible. That's why countries are trying to ban the sales of microplastics of any kind. It's a slow process, but, well, yeah. I mean, I wonder, like, the idea of, like, just taking this as a slow process. Meanwhile, like, an uncountable and incalculable amount of damage is being done. There's a lot of stuff out there that the international community doesn't know how to clean or is not asked to put money into cleaning up. Yeah, I think that it's the private corporations. It's not just selling microplastics. Normal plastic materials will break down and doesn't... Yes, that's true. Alright, folks, we made it. We got through all the news that we wanted to get to, and we did our climate recap. Appreciate what the I appreciate what the Beckett Sphere does, and we need more people. We need more people like that. You know, like she says, don't forget to support your local news organizations and to never stop talking about the climate crisis whenever you can. As all, yeah, they can't just ban all plastic, but they can start moving in the direction of having renewable plastic from hemp and fungi. There are alternatives that we can have. We are just choosing not to enact these alternatives. It's too slow, maybe, but at this point, we've got to do whatever we can. There's no other. There's no other alternative. But throwing our hands up is not a solution. I gave up on hoping. Well, I mean, you can't though. Like, that is like a place we don't want to go. I understand the reasoning, and I can't, quite honestly, I don't blame you. But while there's still time, we do what we can. That's all. That being said, folks, I do want to thank everybody for hanging out here today. We do, thank you so much for the massive raid. USA Ho, I appreciate that. You're the best guys, keep it all. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Skidded here. I appreciate that. It really does. It really does make me feel good when you guys make these comments. Appreciate that. Thank you for all the new follows. Thank you, Siscat, for the subscription. I appreciate that. Folks, if you see anybody with a little diamond next to them, please make sure you give them a follow, support. Usually the diamonds are content creators of some shape, some sort. They're content creators of some sort. Some are streamers. Thank you so much to USA Ho. I appreciate that again. If you haven't already, go show some support to them. I think I got everybody. As always, please stay safe. Have a good day. You have a good day. Please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya. Alright, hang tight, folks. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. See ya.